Um, yeah. And there we are. Now we're recording. So I'll start again, shall I? So I'm MJ, and I'm from Accessibility Partners. I am a disabled person. I was born with disabilities, and I spent a lot of my schooling in hospital. That's not an easy thing to do because I'm very good at Scrabble now and Monopoly. I'm quite good at Monopoly. So if ever you want a game of either of those, I'm pretty much going to win. But as far as opportunities, I wouldn't say that I was given the same opportunities as other people because of my disabilities. And so I'm just going to share a PowerPoint presentation with you. It's not death by PowerPoint though, so hopefully you won't get too bored. And I'm going to see if I can start this without failing. Let me see. Let me just see if I can unshare my screen. Hang on a second. End the show and then start again. I think I'll have to share. There we go. I can share. There we are. Can I share my screen? Let me see if I can. Yes, I can. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm from Accessibility Partners, and I've also brought some friends from Inclusion. Now, I believe that we are better together, and there's lots of reasons for that, but it is Inclusion's tagline that we are just better together. Inclusion is the charitable arm of our services, and we are hand in hand. There are some members from Inclusion here tonight, and Inclusion is a charitable organisation. Accessibility Partners was created just after COVID because I couldn't access work. I couldn't access to work. I've been working with the Access to Work programme since 2005. Insofar as my employees for the business that I ran until COVID many of them were disabled. The reason for that is because, to be honest, I get on with disabled people a lot better because they understand my experience in some ways. So I just feel that I have some connection with other disabled people, and so I tend to hang with them, and then that means that they tend to hang with me, and they tend to apply for jobs that are around me. And so it's gone from us having before COVID, the organisation that I ran had approximately 60% of the employees that had disabilities, and now we're 100% employees that have disabilities. We're an organisation in AP that is run by disabled people for everybody, and that's what Inclusion is creating. So Inclusion is a charity that we get together and we make good things happen. The reason we're better together is because it's really not a good idea for the organisation that is serving those people through access to work to be fighting really with the government, because we really want them to play nicely with us effectively. Now, Inclusion is a voluntary group that began literally because I couldn't access to work, and so I began a petition. As we do in England, we either queue or we start a petition, don't we? And I started a petition that said that actually access to work was inaccessible, and I wondered why. So I'm going to talk to you about both of those organisations tonight and why I felt that access to work was inaccessible. And we're going to ask the question of what employability is and why do we care anyway. I'll just like you. I don't know whether you can just either pop in the chat, and maybe one of the lovely ladies who are co-hosting this event will unmic and just tell me what those comments are. If you do have anything, ideas about what you think employability is, and why we're actually here, because we're all here for a reason tonight. We're talking about employability. Why are we talking about it, and why do we care? If anyone wants to put any comments in the chat, I'll give you a minute. I'm going to talk to you about what I think employability is in a minute, and why I care, or why I think we should care. But if there are any comments, you're welcome to feed them back to me, either of you. because I can't actually see the chat whilst I'm delivering. If there aren't any, oh, I'm lying to you. I can see the chat. I'm fibbing. I can see it. There we go. Okay, yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, to enable disabled people to achieve success in the workplace, like I have. Thank you, Andrew. Absolutely. Thank you. Anything else? No, that's good. Okay. So I don't know whether you can see that. I can see all of you lot. Here we are. There we are. What I've put here is employability is a set of skills, knowledge, personal traits and attributes which make a person successful in obtaining, retaining and becoming flexible within their workfulness. And workfulness is something that we have coined in Accessibility Partners and Inclusion, that in our humble opinion, workfulness, can you see the chat? Am I there we are, I should hide that. Workfulness is whether we are paid, whether we're unpaid, whether we're working in the home, whether we're working outside the home, whether we're online, whether we're hybrid. Workfulness is everything that we do to have a purpose. Yeah, so purposefulness, I guess. It's certainly a smorgasbord of things, isn't it? And it's more than that for me. It's more than just our skills, our knowledge, and our personal traits and our attributes. It's more than that, and I will go on to say why. Hang on, though. I think you can say I have to do that. We're talking about workfulness, but actually, how can we when we are disabled? Because so many times in the UK you will hear, oh, well, you know, he's disabled so he doesn't work, she's disabled so unfortunately she can't, they really haven't got a job, there isn't a job that they can't do, they can do. That really is a theme, I would say, that we have. Now, I was going to ask you why you think you can't work. But to be honest, I think that it might be better if I just go ahead and let you know why I think we can't work. The things that I've found are, and I'm sure you can all share in the chat any of yours whilst we're doing this, are physical barriers, the technological barriers, misconceptions about whether we can produce our productivity, discriminatory practices, and I'm sure you're going to tell me about those later. System inefficiencies, access to work, one of those system inefficiencies, weak enforcement of our laws and inadequate legislation. The Disability Discrimination Act really doesn't have any teeth. We have less opportunities than others. Only one in, I think, only 5% of learning disabled people have had work or work. 5% of individuals with a learning disability have workfulness. Financial disincentives, welfare benefits, and being frightened to lift our head above the parapet. Stigma and social exclusion rather, not inclusion, I wish, social exclusion. I'm on 3 placements at the moment. I'm retraining, further training as a social worker, and all 3 of my placements have not had a lift, and all of the social workers have been upstairs. Low expectations. Nobody expects a disabled person to be a social worker, and certainly not one in a wheelchair, which is probably why there isn't a lift. Inflexible working arrangements. I currently have to do 8 until 4, 5 days a week for 100 days, just the same as every able-bodied, non-disabled trainee social worker, because we are used to inflexible working arrangements. And in fact, we celebrate the fact that people can handle inflexible working arrangements, and it is held up, certainly in social work, as a capability. Rigid job descriptions. I've already been told in my placement that I need to understand the parameters of my role and where they end and where they begin. And a lack of part-time or flexible roles. Again, in order to train to be a social worker, I have to work full-time, 5 days a week, inflexible. So all of those ways, and you're going to have different stories, and we're going to hear about some of them tonight, I'm sure. But the question, I guess, is how then, excuse me, let me just go back again. How then are we able to circumnavigate that? Well, I think that a lot of people, and you've probably just seen the next slide that says, well, apply for access to work. I think we need to put the horse before the cart rather than the cart before the horse. And I think with the UK government, if anybody has seen the latest budget, where effectively we're labelled as helpless, hapless, feckless, and workless, and that we need to be put back to work or put into work, or we need to be economically more active, or stop us being economically inactive. Well, unfortunately, with all of the barriers that we've just discussed, I've just alluded to, we have all of those to circumnavigate, and then we have to find out how we're going to find out how to do what we do. Now, you might be here with a job, and that would be great if you are, although having an employer isn't easy either. It might be that you have an idea about what you want to do. So you might have a dream. You might have an idea that you want to do something and be self-employed. Or you may have a hobby that you'd really like to turn into a job. That's definitely what some people do. And in fact, I would suggest that the first image there of the heart, the orange heart, or the white heart in the orange shape, is find your passion. Now, the reason that I say that is very often people will go and find a job. And actually, I think when we've got to navigate all of those barriers, unless you are working within your passion, it's very difficult to sustain anyway. But it's more difficult to sustain when you have a disability. Finding our purpose. Now, I was speaking at Cardiff University on a panel last week, and they were all journalists and TV students asking how they break into the industry and how we make the industry more inclusive. And they asked me how they would start if they were going to go into business. And I said, well, stop telling me about what you want to tell everybody, and then tell me the problem that you're going to solve. So finding your purpose is about finding the problem that you are going to solve for the world or be part in finding a solution to. And like with those students that I was speaking to, they were learning something new: journalism, TV, camera work, all those things. There are a plethora of jobs in that industry. And it may be that they want to be a writer. It could be they want to be a runner. There are hundreds of different positions within that industry. But through learning something new, then they open themselves up to all of those ideas. So I would say, learn something new. And as was spoken about at the beginning, I've been advocating for our needs, well, since I was 19. I became an advocate at the age of 19. I walked through a shopping centre and somebody said, do you like helping people? And that began my advocacy journey. As far as learning something new, so you know a little bit about my background, I'm a SENDCO, so a special educational needs and disability coordinator. I'm a dyslexia tutor, so I can assess and I support dyslexic students. And I've worked in higher education for 15 years, running a business providing disabled students allowance. So if anyone hasn't gone to university or want to know about university, it's something that accessibility partners don't do, but we certainly signpost, handhold and support through those processes. And we have some people here tonight who I've supported both as a practitioner in education and also as their access to work coach. So develop a skill through that learning, right? And it might be that you're learning at university. It could be that you're grabbing some voluntary work. It might be that you're working with somebody like Inclusion. We're here tonight because Inclusion have been practicing going to different places, presenting different parts of themselves, and learning to be on what we're developing, which is a lived experience panel. And that lived experience panel is going to the British Association of Social Workers in June to present about sustainability in disability. and how we promote that. They are developing their skills, and they're developing their skills, well, for other things, not only just for inclusion, but also those skills, those presenting skills can be used anywhere: a job interview, a party, their daughter's wedding, when they're giving a speech, you name it, or their sons. There I am being sexist. Read, listen, and connect to others. Do what you're doing here today. Come and meet other people. You know, we very much go and look for people that are like us. And that's the difference with inclusion. Inclusion has a plethora of disabilities, and they're all different. We have, you name it, and we probably have it. And the same with age. So we're a mixed bag, and we're a mixed bag because we believe that actually getting out there a bit and finding a different set of people, as well as finding people who have the same experience, is important. And it widens our perspective and gives us a greater understanding of some of the challenges that other disabled people have. But most of all, right, believe in yourself. But to do that, I think you need to surround yourself with people who also believe in themselves and who will help you believe in you. You know, we are the sum total of the 5 people that we are closest to, it is said. So think really carefully about the 5 people around you that are closest to you, and whether they are contributing to your well-being, contributing to your workfulness, whatever that is, or contributing to your life. Now, I believe that when we are learning and we are working or workful, then we have a life potentially that we can create, that we deem is worth living. And that's the only life that matters for me, is the one that we deem is worth living. So I'm going to ask you to ask questions in a little while, of course. But as we get to halfway through, I'm going to just explain about inclusion. So when I began thinking about access to work, and I'd applied for access to work, I got a job I moved to Wales from Scarborough. The COVID thing was a bit of a killer for me, literally. I ended up with double pneumonia and double pleurisy. I was intubated in York District, and I passed away 3 times, and I was resuscitated. And I'm here to tell the tale. But afterwards, everything around me, my business, the buildings that we had, everything was in tatters. It was 19 weeks, and I was in hospital for much longer. So I had to move to Wales and get a job, and I did. I moved to Wales, and I got a teaching job in that disabled students allowance system that I've talked about. And I applied for access to work. And access to work took 20 months to come back to me. 20 months. 20 months. Now, it wasn't like that before COVID, and we are talking about 2021. But 20 months, I got a job, and 20 months later, they got hold of me. Now, in that time, I decided that I wasn't going to tolerate this. And so I incorporated Accessibility Partners, and I started working with a lady who'd been referred to me through one of the ladies that I undertook therapy training with, because I moved on from SENDCO work to further training as a psychotherapist, because all of my students kept coming, and basically they had emotional challenges because they were all disabled. And I realized, because of my own therapy, that therapy was very important. So whilst they came to me and they were waiting on an NHS waiting list, we created a team of 10 trainee therapists, all who worked with the organization's clients. So I began working with one client, one lady, with Accessibility Partners, before Access to Work came to see me for my job, and indeed before they came to see that client, because they took 10 months for her. So it was 20 months for me, and 10 months into that, I began Accessibility Partners, and 10 months later, they responded to my first client. So if you've secured a job, what happens next? Well, you should apply for Access to Work, because that's a UK government programme for individuals with disabilities who have 1 hour of workfulness, paid workfulness a week, 1 hour of paid work, remunerative work a week, are 16 or above and are in the UK and have a disability, physical, mental, or psychological. And then you apply for Access to Work. The Access to Work programme is online. The Access to Work application is on the .gov website. The application is a lot easier than it was. It's the same black and white kind of form that the .gov is. It's very similar to the PIP, Personal Independence, fill-in form now. It's not got the same questions, but it's quite, it's comprehensive. It's as comprehensive as a PIP form, but it's online and you can apply and fill that in. However, it's not easy to understand what they want from you on that form, because it doesn't really tell you what there is to ask for. So when it asks you if you know what you need, it doesn't tell you what there is to choose from. So that's very challenging. So you can fill that form in before you've got a job. Really, you should be filling that form in, but it's very difficult to know what you need for your job until you have that job, right? And when you do get a job, then you're already working, but you haven't had the difficulties overcome yet. So that's the second challenge. So yes, when you do secure a job, the next thing is to apply for Access to Work. And now they take 2 weeks to respond, not 20 months, because over 300 signatures later, and we were able to take that petition to Robert Halfron, who is an MP with polio, thanks to a gentleman in this audience who shared it with him, and he took it to the office of the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Disabled People, who was then before they were exited and we got a new one, and they assured us that that was going to change, that time scale was going to change, and it has. We've now gone from 20 months to 2 weeks for a new job. So we apply for Access to Work. However, Access to Work is not the easiest thing in the world. I have to say that it's taken me since 2005 to understand it. It changes quite consistently. I would say that the process is preclusive, in that they don't tell you what is available, and therefore it's very difficult to know what to ask for. You're not sure when they're coming back to you. When they do, they often want some unreasonable timescales, like they want you to respond, almost immediately, or they close the case. And when they do respond, they're not very forthcoming about what there is or how they can help you. So Accessibility Partners began in the way that it began, doing what it began to do, because before COVID, I explained to Access to Work that some people who were coming to us, because we were working with DSA and Access to Work before COVID, some people that were coming to us when they were leaving university and they were moving into workfulness, they really couldn't handle the Access to Work process, let alone get to the end of it. Handling it was just, well, too much. And in fact, we worked out it takes between 12 and 24 man hours for us to get you through an application and the other side, and provide you with the strategies that you need to cope with the process and to get to the end where you have an award, you have your needs met to the way that has been assessed as being possible, and then you have the chance to then access that equipment, support and help. Because it isn't just about the process, it's also about managing that process and accessing it and drawing it down. So you'll probably hear tonight some people who have come to us, they come with an Access to Work award, but they've not been able to use it, and there's lots and lots of reasons why that is, far too many for us to go through tonight. But from the beginning, from the get-go, the application is challenging to complete. It's difficult to understand. It's not easy to understand the beginning and end of, because it's as long as a piece of string. It depends on how long it is for you. It depends on whether you are self-employed, employed, or a company director, and any of those is possible with Access to Work. It also depends on any of those statuses as to when they respond, because the 2 weeks is only for a new job. So if you have an employer and you have a job secured and you apply, Access to Work agree to contact within 2 weeks. Well, I don't know very many people, to be honest, that get an interview, get a job, and then can just say to the employer, well, you know what? You're going to have to wait a couple of weeks anyway before the government come back to me. So we're already at a bit of a disadvantage, right? So that's why I think that there are lots of ways to skin a cat, and potentially Access to Work needs to be delivered in maybe a different way to just go get a job. And there's lots of reasons for that. So the problem that I've got, and the reason that I'm here, and I'm not just here because Accessibility Partners provides Access to Work, believe me, because we have a waiting list and we have a fortnight responding at the moment. Unfortunately, I am now as tardy as Access to Work in that we have such a workload that we are not going to be able to respond for at least 14 days. And the reason for that is because, well, people are getting to know where we are. And the reason that I think people are now, well, tuning in to the idea that actually it's a good idea for them to contact Inclusion and join and become a participant, a speaker, somebody who speaks up for their fellow man, somebody that joins together with other people with lots of different disabilities who all have very different experiences in different parts of the country and indeed different countries now. Because I think that when we understand our people's experience, we are able to speak up all much better for ourselves as well as other people. And we know, right, that the government is about to remove the capacity for work assessment, right? And the capacity for work assessment is for those individuals on long-term ESA or what was known as incapacity benefit. And we have somebody here tonight again who was in that position or would have been in that position and in fact is now working. But the reason that I'm concerned is because they're going to remove the capacity for work assessment. Great. Nobody wants that. It's an inhumane, horrendously pointless assessment that's quite purposeless and has caused many problems in the UK. But why are they removing it? Well, they're removing it, I think, because of the way that it's been delivered, but they're also removing it, I think, for a really worrying reason. So we're members of BASE, the British Association of Supported Employment, and I'm of the understanding that the government are communicating with BASE in order that they can further develop their workforce of job coaches, work coaches rather, not job coaches, work coaches, of work coaches. Our work coaches currently, as I'm sure most people will be aware, work within the job centres. They're also now getting out into the hubs and they are in third sector organisations and they're providing informal advice, support, signposting and guidance. And they are inviting people to get that access and then offering them the opportunity to move into workfulness. However, I haven't met one yet that understands the Access to Work process. I haven't met one yet that understands PIP. I haven't met one yet that understands the capacity for work assessment or the impact or how difficult it is to manage that system and how frightening it is to let go of those welfare benefits or even to have them threatened in any way. And when they remove the capacity assessment, it is my opinion that those 15 hours that people are job searching at the moment that don't have that in place, so those people who are asked to job search for 15 hours will be doing that regularly. I don't think there'll be a choice after the capacity assessment is taken away. And that would be great if there was work and if there were jobs and if those jobs knew how to provide for disabled people. But I'm not sure they do, not all of them. So what's next is the capacity assessment being taken away, and what's after that? is workfulness in the UK for disabled people. Now, I don't believe that everybody should work. I believe that people should work if they can, when they can, and according to their well-being. But I do believe that workfulness is a fantastic opportunity for well-being. And I believe that everybody has a possibility of doing something. I think the first thing that everybody can do is join with each other. So whether you are in this kind of support setting with the MD Support Centre, or whether you are coming online and joining inclusion.gg, GG, by the way, is good game. It's usually used by gamers, is the .gg, and we're definitely gamers in inclusion because we're playing the game of life and we're playing it to the best of our ability, but we're playing it together because we're having to connect the dots. And in inclusion, I feel that there is a massive opportunity to learn from people who have gone through the programme, who have gone through the Access to Work programme, who have worked with and are working with accessibility partners, who have been to all sorts of events with us. So Inclusion have raised money. We have raised money for the first disabled entrepreneur. So let me just tell you a little bit about self-employment and access to work. I said that you could be either employed or self-employed or a company director. If you were self-employed and you began self-employment today, the government would expect by the 18th, sorry, not the 18th, the 15th of April next year, that you would have turned over, that's brought into your business or to you as a self-employed person, say you had an Etsy account or something, just shy of £7,000 in that year. Now, it's understandable why that exists because, you know, we can't have Geraldine selling greeting cards at a car boot sale on a Sunday and getting 50 pence and expecting £66,000 worth of access to work support. And that is the grant amount per year per person maximum. So imagine if I have a deaf-blind psychologist that needs hand signing to her psychology clients, that's quite an expensive thing to provide. So that's where 66 comes in. Please don't all think, oh, we've got £66,000. £66,000 provides everything for a person. That would be their equipment, their support from accessibility partners, their 12 to 24 hours coping strategy support that we can provide. It would be their AT and IT, and we have an assistive technology tutor and trainer here tonight who has worked with me and has been one of my students. So if you've got any questions about assistive technology, there is somebody here tonight who can answer that better than me, I would imagine. And it also will provide the equipment and things like a personal mobility device, if that's what you need for work, or software or hardware. And then, of course, travel, because Access to Work also can help with taxi support or a support worker driver. And they will contribute towards that. Everybody has to go to work, so you do have to pay something towards travel because we all have to travel. But the difference between what everybody else pays and what you have to pay, Access to Work can be assessed. You can be assessed to see if Access to Work can contribute to that. So yeah, so you can join Inclusion and hear all of that process. And also we meet 3 times a week in different places. So we don't just meet in Inclusion, we meet in different places, and I'll go on to that, where you can meet a different type of person, because we don't just sit in Inclusion, we take Inclusion to the other places so that we are infiltrating those normie places as well as our disabled spaces. We believe that Inclusion is absolutely about everyone, so you could join Inclusion. I talked about what employability is at the beginning. Now, I don't think that it's just about our skills and attributes. I believe it's about the ability to shift, to pivot, to see the shifting sands and to see those opportunities and seize them, even though the waters look rough. And they do look rough. People are not ready for disabled people. I'm a trainee social worker in a place without a lift. They're not ready for us yet. But the only way they're going to get ready, in my opinion, is for us to show them how to get ready. And it's also my opinion that we should jump before we are pushed, because we're going to be pushed in some way or another, be it pushed to look for work that isn't there, or pushed to talk to somebody who doesn't really understand the situation that we're in, or pushed by somebody that's just been trained to think about getting us to work, but maybe not individuals who have the lived experience of being disabled. So I say jump before you're pushed, but I say do it, and do it in your own way. Do it by joining a group of people who know about this stuff. Do it by coming, and that should be .gg, look at that spelling mistake from the dyslexic woman. Come to inclusion.gg, have a look at our website at Accessibility Partners, which is a2w.me. Have a look on all of these places. Instagram, it's at Mandy Jane L. Have a look for me on LinkedIn, Mandy Jane Lace. If you know Clubhouse, if you don't, download it. It's on your phone, and it's an audio media app, so you can listen to us on Clubhouse like you would a radio, but actually we're all in the room and you can hear us all talking. In Inclusion on Clubhouse, so there's MJ's house, and then there's the Inclusion Clubhouse, and YouTube. Now on YouTube there are around, I think there's around 41 videos where I have been talking about access to work, workfulness, the opportunities, the challenges, DSA, what is Disabled Students Allowance, you name it. There is literally a smorgasbord of information there, and actually some quite fun rooms. And if you come onto Clubhouse, there's an entire 3-year catalogue, a back catalogue of the rooms that we have delivered in Inclusion. And every week in Inclusion, we deliver a new subject. So it's Mondays at 6 a.m. In MJ's house. We start Mondays off very early, bright and early. We start the working day off at 6 o'clock and we finish at 7 p.m. on Monday nights. So actually this is our normal hangout time. It's just that we've come to hang out with you. And then 8 a.m. on a Saturday. So that's Monday morning, Monday night, and then 8 a.m. on a Saturday. So you've got 6, 7 and 8. Monday, and Saturday. So you see me at the beginning of Monday and the end of Monday. So a lot of people have seen me already at 6 o'clock this morning in MJ's house on Clubhouse. And tonight we're ordinarily in Inclusion, and then live on StreamYard. And on LinkedIn Live on a Saturday. So if you want to join in, come and talk, ask questions, pick other people's brains, then they are the places to come. And this isn't a quick fix. This isn't something that can be shared in one night, but it is something that you can absorb over time. And it is something that you can learn and absorb and act upon. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm just going to talk, because I've not really dived into what Access to Work does, because it's such a big story. But what I can tell you is that if you are looking for workfulness and you feel that that your future isn't everything you want it to be yet, and you have some opportunities to apply those things that you might have already started, like hobbies or interests, then I think the way through, and I'll explain why in a minute, is self-employment. I do. Right now, I think it's self-employment. And I don't know what the government feel about that, and neither do I much care. What they need to do about that is help employers understand how to work with disabled people if we are going to have people employed. Because currently, for an employer to have somebody disabled working with them, if they have over £100,000 turnover, and so many employees, I think it's 50, they have to pay the first £1,000 or 20% of the Access to Work programme costs. And that can be up to £66,000. It is for me. My award caps out I have to slide board to transfer. I'm a permanent wheelchair user. I have multiple organ failure. I have chronic health conditions, and I am also neurodivergent. My access to work caps out. It means my company this year is going to have to pay 20% towards my award, which of course is a lot of money. Sorry, I'm just looking, there we are. And excellent, yeah, about halfway, that's lovely. Sorry, I lost my throat then because I saw the chat. There you go, neurodivergent. The reason I sell self-employment is because now they have literally just changed it. It wasn't 20%, but it is now. The first £1,000 or 20% of the award in that position. So it's not going to help employers, large employers, want to work with access to work or want to work with disabled employees. Self-employment, if you begin self-employment, then access to work is 100% funded, because of course you are under £100,000 turnover and under the amount of employees, and I'm forgetting the amount, but there's a certain amount, I can't remember right now, but you're under the threshold. So it's 100%. The challenge with that is that whilst access to work come back in a fortnight for employment, they don't come back in a fortnight for self-employment. They come back in a few weeks, actually, about 12 to 14 weeks. So you're expected to begin self-employment. You're expected to begin without access to work. They don't come back for 12 weeks. And when they do come back, it takes about another 12 to 15 weeks to go through the process. So you're talking about 6 months. And then by the end of the next 6 months, they're expecting you to have turned over £7,000. Now, the challenge with that is that at that point, if you haven't turned over the £7,000 and it gets to 12 months, they stop your access to work. They don't just stop your access to work, they bar you for 5 years. They bar you. They bar you. I said it 3 times because I still find it flabbergasting that that's what happens. You are barred from using the access to work process for that employment for 5 years if you haven't made the minimum income guarantee of just shy of £7,000. So inclusion has begun, the Disabled Entrepreneurs Club. Now, I don't want to upset everybody, but do you remember the 80s when they did telethons and helped us poor disabled people by raising money to give us some help? Well, we've got to start it again, I'm afraid, but this time I'm doing it with my tongue in cheek because we absolutely need it. So the first disabled entrepreneur will be crowned on the 4th of July, and I didn't choose that date, even though it's Independence Day. They will be crowned on the 4th of July because we are at the Disability Rise North on the 4th of July in Sunderland, and I will be presenting that first crowning on that day because it is Independence Day, and frankly, it couldn't be more pertinent, could it? And they will receive, that first disabled entrepreneur, that minimum income guarantee into a bank account. And the remaining of that £10,000 award will be their strategy coping support from accessibility partners for the first 3 months of their shenanigans with access to work, because that's what's needed. And so then from that first one, we will then create hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more until the government take away the 5-year ban and the minimum income guarantee ban for self-employment, because I think it's horrendous. So I'm showing the government up, and we as Inclusion are helping them to understand that it's really not a plan to be putting that kind of practice into their guidelines and then not tackling it when they're told about it. I've spoken to senior managers in access to work and said, I'm sorry, but that's just discrimination. Why 5 years? If you go bankrupt in the UK, and there are people that go bankrupt for thousands and hundreds of thousands of pounds, and money is written off, they're only barred for 6 years. But if you don't make the minimum income guarantee, you're barred for 5. I think it's quite preclusive and quite discriminatory. So we are creating the first disabled entrepreneur, and Inclusion have been fantastic in helping me do that. So I raised funds for a hand cycle. I'd never heard of a hand cycle. I then retrained after coming out of hospital for the last 2 years in cycling. I couldn't get around the block when I started, and I carried out and completed a hand cycle marathon last summer, and Inclusion came to cheer me on. If you go onto the Instagram, you'll be able to find it, or go and have a look on any of our our social medias, and you'll find that there. GMTV's coach Pete Cohen came and supported, and so did my other coach, who is the director of Suzuki. That's Dale Wyatt, the director of Suzuki England and Ireland, came, and we really do have in Inclusion some incredible allies. We raised, I think, about 6k through the marathon. I think about 6. I think we're up to about 8 for the £10,000 award, and we'll have that by July, because if we don't have it by July, believe me, I shall go out and find it. Because we'll be crowning that first disabled entrepreneur on the 4th of July. And the reason for that is because of that minimum income guarantee, and the other reason is because of that 5-year ban, but also because entrepreneurship, but I believe we're ultra because we just have to be better than the rest, is the way forward for workfulness. I would like to see hundreds of thousands of millions of disabled people creating services by disabled people for everybody, because inclusion by design is the only way that we are going to create work opportunities for us. And we are the only people that understand how it is. That lived experience, I'm afraid, just isn't something that can be replicated. I don't even care if you've got just a family member. I really do believe that living the deal is actually one of the most insightful things that can happen to a person. And I believe they're the people that should be delivering services for disabled people, not just disabled people, but we all definitely should be looking towards services for disabled people in terms of our workfulness. And I believe that's what the government believe too. Because I'll be honest, I think they've been listening to me for 30 years. And I have been saying that. I have never been in receipt of incapacity benefit, even though I had underlying entitlement to it. I have, however, utilised every form of welfare benefits that you can imagine, tax credit. I would have utilised all of them had I not had workfulness, and I've utilised and accessed them for thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. Inclusion was originally called Yell SOS. It's been rebranded because when I died, it did too. And we had to drag it out of the government annals. They had dissolved us. In fact, they put a DNAR on me, and there was already a power of attorney available on my life, and nobody thought I was coming back. So we literally, just like me, resuscitated the charity, rebranded it, and started again. So I have got some Inclusion members here. I'm going to just say who is here before we go into questions, and I'm sure they can just say, maybe if they wouldn't mind, I'll go to each of them and say who they are and what they do. That'd be great, just so you can point them out, and maybe you can then ask their questions. I'll introduce a little bit of them because they are definitely the best people to ask these questions to, as well as myself. We have Christian Burton, he is Director of Inclusion. We have Julian, who's there in his glasses, looking quite, yeah, looking over there, over his glasses at me. And he's also co-director of Inclusion. We have Alexia Franklin, and Alexia is an Open University student, and she is doing an undergraduate in psychology, I believe, in psychology, yep. James Lawrence, who is just about to move into self-employment and is a client of Accessibility Partners and was my co-rider in the marathon, and a member, a very important member of Inclusion. And I don't think there's anybody else that, oh, I'm lying. Yes, there is. There he is. And there's Andrew, who is our assistive technology trainer. He doesn't belong to us. He works with another company, a large DSA provider, actually, the one that's just got the largest contract for assessment of DSA, the second in the country. Andrew is, oh, and of course, we also have, you see how many there are. We also have Traherne, and Traherne is a totally blind electronic music producer. He has cerebral palsy and he runs an accessibility technology company, and he's one of our, I've got to say, Accessibility Partners successes. He has been a year in business now, and he's just moving independently for the first time in his life. So we've got lots and lots of stories here tonight. As I say, I've been an Access to Work recipient since 2003. Yes, since 2003, and I've seen lots of different changes in that. So I hope we can probably, stop recording, but unless I'm quite happy if the guys want to say hello, that's up to you. Do you want to stop recording now, or are you about there? What do you think?
I'm happy to stop recording now if we
If everybody would be.
have some questions.
You can always cut the end off, go. Okay, and maybe